Hello friends!
Hello!
Welcome to Discoverage 14.8. A bit later on we'll have the review of the last issue of Star Trek vs. Transformers.
Previously on Star Trek Discovery.
We've heard from Purry on Light and Shadows.
Hello, Purry here to talk about the Star Trek Discovery episode Light and Shadow. No, I didn't remember it, I looked it up. Apparently we've got this whole big database of knowledge of the world. Obviously this is based on the feedback we heard as well. This was quite good. I enjoyed it well enough. It kept me occupied throughout. It had some interesting things in it. And I think, again, this was a bit like... I think I talked about this to some other people, or possibly there's been other episodes like it where this seemed to be getting things set up. I think you said it in the podcast as well, that this is setting things up for later episodes. So the episode is a bit mechanical, but I think it had some good stuff. So the Ash and Pike stuck in a shuttle sort of subplot, that was okay. It did seem like to give us a bit of action, a bit of something to grab a hold of in this episode, because the rest of it was very talky. Nothing wrong with talky episodes, but I like the fact that they have tried to give us a bit of peril just to keep us occupied. Although that time, I think someone mentioned at the time, tsunami right next to the Kaminar was it? No one seems worried about what it's going to do to the planet. And there were some interesting things about, actually, we know it's time travel and something coming through. So again, that was kind of a way to seed a plot point, and indeed potentially give us an Arium plot, or at least a plot involving Arium. So a way to involve the little people. And actually, I wish I could remember it. I'm still getting the rest of the cast names, but I think he's the weapons officer guy, or the sensors bloke, he got stuff to do as well, so that was quite good. The Burnham, the main plot, the sort of meteor bit, I really liked the interaction between Burnham and Sarek and Amanda. I thought that worked really well. We can't say too much about Spock, because he's being Spock not in his right mind at the moment. Although the Katra chamber I liked, I seem to remember, and I think it was in some tie-in books that did try to clarify a bit on what Katras were and what they could do with them, and the idea being that there was a place, like I said, I don't know if it ever showed up in Enterprise, but I'm sure a tie-in had the idea of what Vulcans, and indeed what Sarek was actually asking Kirk to do in Star Trek 3, was to get Spock's Katra, and it wasn't to be reunited with his body to bring him back from the dead. Originally, I think it was just to put him in one of those caves, and it's basically... It took the idea of more Katras as recordings of your brain state. So if you take everything that you've done, everything that you know, your whole life's experience, and save it into some sort of media, like, say, a psychic transfer, then you have an echo of that person. And the idea being that people could go and ask advice or sort of seek solace, or even visit the ancestors by going to these Katra chambers. So I quite like seeing the idea of that, although it wasn't really explained that way. Like I say, I'm sure it was an old tie-in somewhere, and from the derelict we know how tight they kept canon on tie-ins. Gilbert and Sullivan musical, guys, come on. So I like seeing that. The other thing I liked is I genuinely don't know what Georgiou's agenda here is, because we all initially go along with the idea that Section 31 are in fact going to take out chunks of Spock's brain with a melon baller and download them onto the internet. That seems like a Section 31-y thing to do. But you've also got to remember that this isn't Philippa Georgiou of the Shenzhou. This is Empress Georgiou, who wants to take control of Section 31, and it suits her to have Michael thinking that she owes her one, because she could have easily said, no, that's an evil device going to do evil things, and you should break Spock out and get him away, because that helps her in the long run, and this is just her playing machinations. Or it could be that they were going to do evil things to Spock, and breaking him out happens to also meet Georgiou's agenda. So I think it really helps, because Georgiou's this really dodgy character who you can't tell exactly where she's going, or indeed what her long-term plan is. That sets up some really interesting ideas for what she might be planning next. So I like that. So I thought that was actually really neat. And indeed, Talos 4, so we're going to the Talosians. Now this is, my friend Alan reminded me this is after the Cage. So I wonder if this is now we're going to find out why there's a death penalty for going to Talos 4 that was mentioned in the menagerie. So yeah, that's quite good. So all that remains for me to say is do keep up the good work. I always look forward to this podcast. It's going to be a good weekend with 2 Borgcasts, so that's always fun for us. I know it's more work for you, but still we do appreciate it. So do keep up the good work, and I look forward to the next episode. Until then, bye for now.
Bye, sir. Thank
Bye.
you. Yes, it's something of a busy weekend, particularly since I'm also packing to go away tomorrow as well. Hey, who's? We'll get there.
You're right that this one is setting up for later episodes, but I do really like the interaction between Burnham, Sarek and Amanda. I think that does work well. And in terms of what Georgiou's playing at, I think she's playing the long game, and I think also she's not going to always be bad and lying. Sometimes she might tell the truth or seem to be nice as part of the kind of charm offensive. There's things to be gained from that as well. So if she can see value in it, perhaps further down the line, she might be nice. So I think you might be right that she's going to call in that favour that Burnham now owes her at some point. So, being nice to someone can work if you can then use that to get them to owe you.
Yeah. And it is good to be involving Ariane, but I do wish they hadn't made it quite so obvious.
Yeah.
Just little subtle things. Like, when they did with Tilly getting the fleck on her.
Yeah.
And we went, ooh, what's that? And it paid off ages later. They really should have done that with Ariane. Just the slightest flicker in her eyes or something. And then just left it at that. And we may or may not have put two and two together. But as it is, they really are spelling it out for us, aren't they?
They are.
There you go. And yeah, I remember the novelisation of Star Trek 3 had a whole chapter on Catras in it, and explaining it all. And yes, there's supposed to be like a repository of deceased Vulcans, whether it's their memories or their souls or what, I can't remember now. But yes, you could sort of go and visit and be close to your loved ones once more. So it's a thing in fiction as well as the main canon stuff as well.
See, when you talk about this, I just think of the Soul Hunter.
Yes,
Babylon 5.
Yeah, along those lines, really. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Tonight's episode of Discovery is If Memory Serves, which is a title that actually makes sense.
It works.
Wow, well done.
Yay.
But no cheers for Netflix, who once more spoilerised this episode. If you clicked on it, it immediately showed you the picture of the Telosians, which is a bit of a shame, but there we are.
A ship in trouble making a forced landing, sir.
It comes from the Talos Star Group.
Their call letters check with a survey expedition.
My name is Christopher Pike, commander of the Space Vehicle Enterprise.
Our destination is the Talos Star Group.
There's a canyon to the left. We can set you down there completely unobserved.
I think it's time to show the captain our secret.
This is Vina. Her parents are dead. She was born almost as we crashed.
This is all some sort of trap.
Are you real?
Perhaps they made me out of dreams you've forgotten.
Is there any way I can keep them from probing my mind, from using my thoughts against me?
I can't help but love you.
Let's get back to the ship.
I can't go with you.
But it's an amazing opening to the story, bringing folk up to date with the cage.
Or the menagerie.
Oh, yeah, but it's really all the bits are from the cage. I mean, the menagerie is obviously in sort of Kirk's era, so it's really, that's the focus here. Interesting how those blue away jackets they wear aren't a million miles away from the Discovery uniforms, isn't it? They're just like the Discovery uniforms. They're not symmetrical. Anyway, cut from Pike to Pike,
which
so to
I
speak.
like.
Yes. Then there's a ridiculous revolving camera shot of the Section 31
ship. What is it with
ship.
those?
Ugh. It's like we're in a washing machine. Leland is getting bollocked by admirals for letting Burnham go free. And then Pike gets Ash to fess up about his relationship with Michael, which is all a bit awkward for him. And they're ordered by 31 to investigate the squid probe from last week.
Yep.
You think things are all going interstellar as Spock flies the shuttle into a black hole? But it turns out to be an illusion protecting Talos 4. Yes, we're back there.
Logical, yeah.
Yep. It's quite a long teaser, it has to be said.
It is, but they've got all the stuff of the cage to cover
it's fun,
to
isn't it?
bring people up. And I love how the tune is playing in the background while they're doing it.
Yeah,
It's
and the way they
cool.
sort of... I know, it's almost comic book-like, the way
It
they show the
is.
pictures,
It's
isn't
like
it?
panels.
Like you're turning the pages.
Yeah, it's cool.
Pike and Ash are sparking off each other still, so they're not best buds yet, which is good news.
No, but I do like their interaction.
Mm-hmm. Shuttle lands on Talos 4, which looks a bit more impressive than it did in the cage, unsurprisingly. It's also obviously a quarry rather than the studio this time. The blue plants are back.
But
Yay.
they're not quite the same. As our daughter said, they're not just paper.
Yes, but they do. Michael does exactly the same thing as Spock and Pike do, which is hold it and it stops the music playing, which is quite cool. Yeah. And they're using that same ambient noise for the planet from the 60s, which is nice. She sees a woman about to enter the shuttle, and Michael accosts her, and it turns out to be Vina. This time played by Melissa George rather than Susan Oliver, who's a bit old and dead now, to be honest.
Yeah, Melissa George, by the way, we need to do Who Are You?
Ah, do you recognise her?
Well, yeah, I know her. She was in Home and Away.
Yeah, I actually looked that up for you, but you knew it. Excellent.
And she's also been in something else.
Can you remember her character's name? It's quite interesting.
Oh, gosh. Can I remember Melissa George's character's name? No, I mean, when you tell me...
She was called Angel.
Really?
Yes. Was she red?
She had red hair.
Ah, she was the Red Angel. There you are, you see? Clever casting. It turns out to be Vina.
Wow. No, she did have
because
red
of
hair.
Home and Away. Anyway.
Wow, we've got to play out to the theme tune, can we?
No, we bloody well can't. Good grief. Years she was in it. Stop it!
Sorry.
You have an iPad over the head if you're not careful. Anyway.
But she was in a film, LA Confidential. We've both seen it.
Oh, right. So that was way back, wasn't it? Oh.
And Dark City.
And Dark City. I should have recognised her from that with her lipstick on. Wow. And that won't be our only Dark City reference, this story, either.
No, so there we are. LA Confidential and Dark City.
Yeah, there we are. Gosh. Anyway, they've been to the Talosians' home below the surface, so there's no naff lift in this one. And we see the residents are no longer all played by women. Plus, I'm sure they were shorter than that.
They were.
Yes. Distractingly, the male one looks like a young Michael Heseltine.
He does. It's really quite scary.
A British MP from the 80s. I mean, he technically still now, I think, in the House of Lords or something.
The only thing that doesn't work is Michael Heseltine had lots
floppy
of hair.
yes.
He used to flick his fringe, didn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, if Michael Heseltine was bald and had a scrotum for a brain, that's exactly what he looked like.
Funny enough. They're still speaking telepathically, at least for a bit, before explaining Spock is experiencing time as a fluid. I mean, possibly beer, I don't know.
Oh, cider. The cider of time.
This stuff means a lot to long-term viewers, but not sure how it would work to newcomers for Trek. I'm rather sad now we showed the kids the cage, because we could have this could have been their introduction to it, and it would have been interesting to see how they react, who these strange, bold characters turning up. But, props for fan service at this point, certainly.
Well, they have all shown the stuff, though, haven't they, from the cage from before?
Only a few seconds worth, though. It's not quite the same, is it? But anyway. They want to view the childhood conflict between Michael and Spock, but she's not comfortable with that. Spock apparently needs it for his sanity. They let her enter his mind, where he recalls the day she ran away and he saw the angel, who shows him Burnham's death. She was going to be gobbled by a Vulcan Gribbly.
I didn't like that.
It's a bit crap, isn't it?
The strange Gribbly thing is just reminds me of Lucas and sticking random aliens in prequels. It really took me
one of
out
those from
it.
Attack of the Clones.
Yeah,
it's a scaled down version of one of those. Yeah,
and it really did take me out of it. I would much have rather that you could hear something and not see clearly.
Yeah, so maybe just some eyes in the dark or something.
And growling, and you know what I mean. I get she was going to be attacked by a thing. I've not got a problem with that, but it didn't work for me. I think that, in all honesty, although Discovery must have a reasonable budget, they ain't got a film budget, and I think they didn't have the money to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, he tells his parents where she is, and they rescue her. On some other planet, Spock mind melds with the Angel, and it shows squid probes destroying planets. It's all very dramatic stuff.
Yeah.
Stamets cooks dinner for Hugh in their enormous but nearly empty quarters. All the rooms in this have suddenly been half emptied, to do with these weird shots they're doing that make the rooms look huge. It's very odd the way this episode is directed. I've lost any sense of these being real environments on a ship, thanks to this widescreen approach.
Well, for some things, I think you're right. For this particular scene, I think it works because it doesn't feel like home, and that's half the point.
Oh, I see. You think they're doing it for artistic reasons. Okay.
I think it's supposed to.
But it takes me out of it more than the Gribbly alien, to be honest. But there you are.
That sort of shot in other contexts would, but in this one, it's all sort of. It all seems one step removed, and Hugh is one step removed from his own life, and so that's what I'm taking from it in terms of direction in the scenes with Hugh. Mm-hmm. I understand they've done the same sort of widescreen shots before with other things, and it hasn't worked.
Well, we get it with Pike's Ready Room later on, and he's definitely emptied out half the furniture of it for these shots, and it's odd.
So for those, it doesn't work, and actually I think the episode would be better for a contrast and only have those strange wide shots with stuff with Hugh and contrast it with things looking normal when Hugh isn't there. Do you see what I mean? That would, I think, have worked better. Anyway,
Hugh can't connect with his memories of food and throws a wobbly because he can't connect with his former life generally. I guess dying will do that to you, really. But it's good that there are consequences. We get a nice scene where Ash persuades Pike to stop looking for Michael, as it'll only lead 31 to her. He explains why he's willing to work for them, even though he doesn't trust them. And Saru reveals to Pike that an unauthorised signal has been sent, presumably by Ariam.
Yeah, because she's got the red lights in her eyes, hasn't she? She has been inhabited by one of the squid baddies, hasn't she?
Yes, that's right. That happened in the last episode, blatantly. But they do keep reminding us about this, which is another failing of this particular
So she's
story.
an agent, because they're all kind of like the Matrix, aren't they, the squid things? So she is really Hugo Weaving. Right.
Anyway, Ethan Peck still doesn't convince us Spock as he talks with Michael and reveals the Angel is a human in a suit. The reason comes out later that it's him trying to be 100% Vulcan, which is never a good thing to watch, as it's his sparkle of humanity that makes him likeable. I mean, see also Star Trek The Motion Picture, where he's a bit of a dick, basically. Yeah. Purely Vulcan Spock is no fun to watch.
But he's...
Right at the end, we get a bit of a smile, and it's like, yes, finally we're getting closer to Spock.
Because you do get the raised eyebrow a lot in the original series, don't you?
Exactly. There's
and
none of
in
that.
A sort of
like you'd see it with his hair, but
no, you get a half, and you get a sort of half smile, not a full smile, but quite often you get like a half smile, don't you, from him?
Then we get Spock in his cell at the starbase, and he's drawing spiral shapes, which gave me a Dark City vibe as well.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought. What's the name of the character though? He draws them all over shit, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's the original detective that's gone a bit larry. Yeah. He nerve pinches his doctor and martial arts his guards before escaping, but he leaves them alive, giving the lie to 31's story. Hugh squares off against Ash, and Saru decides the rumble has to happen, which seemed really odd. How does he know they're not going to kill each other, for heaven's sake? I mean, it kind of ends in a draw-ish. As Pike later points out, it's hardly an example of by-the-book conflict resolution.
I love Saru's response, though.
The Starfleet manual offers no regulatory guidelines for interactions between humans with Klingons grafted to their bones and a ship's doctor returned from the dead.
Yeah, Doug Jones does well with that line. It has to be said. He makes the most of it.
I love the way he delivers it. It's not an excuse. He doesn't deliver it in an apologetic tone.
No, he's doing it in almost a sort of aggressive way, in a way.
Yeah, I don't think too aggressive, but you are seeing that more since he evolved, and that's why Pike then turns around to him and says, I think, he says, I don't mean this as a judgment, but do you think you would have made a different decision had you, before you evolved? And Saru's like, yeah, probably.
Anyway, they exit the turbo lift into a corridor that looks ridiculously huge suddenly. That's just bizarre. Never mind. And in his equally half-empty and ready room, Pike sees Vina, and she talks about having spent a lifetime with a version of him inside of her. Fanar. Anyway, this obviously plays out in the menagerie, with the crippled Pike rejoining her for reals. Spoilers there for a 50-year-old episode of TV, but, come on. She shows him Michael and Spock, who reveals it's his memories of the future 31 wants for strategic purposes, which makes good sense.
It does.
And is a satisfying payoff for that mystery, why they've been after him so badly.
And it does completely fit.
Yeah, find out how it all turns out. Yeah, that's very 31, isn't it? Spock tells his captain they need to come for him. Then you get weird, tiny Star Wars droids tidying up the mess hall after the rumble, which seems very out of place for Star Trek, that has to be said.
Oh, you never see anything like that in any iteration of Trek.
No, we don't have droids in Trek. What's going on?
Well, you do occasionally, but you don't see, like, the exocomps.
They were clunky as hell, and B, that was one story, and they never did it again.
Yeah, but what I mean is they're very specialised, though. The exocomps, if you remember, in Next Gen, were designed to go to places humans couldn't. What you don't ever see in Star Trek is droids or bots doing jobs that humans could safely do.
And making little R2-D2 beepy noises as well. It's just... Ugh.
It doesn't fit with that universe. It's wrong.
Heartbreakingly, Hugh tells Stamets that he's not going back to his old life. So there are definitely consequences to his return, which is good for dramatic tension purposes, but it's like kind of sad as well.
You feel really sorry for Stamets, but I would have felt cheated if Hugh had just come back and it had been fine. And I like the idea that he hasn't got a bloody clue who or what he is, that he didn't ask to be. And there's kind of, I get the impression that it's kind of where he says he's got sort of memories of taste of things, but otherwise it's all for the first time and he wants to feel and stuff. It's a bit like he's a child again in some ways.
Yeah. Discovery goes to spore jump to Talos. I thought they weren't using the spore drive anymore. For heaven's sake, how many last times of using it can they have? I mean, wasn't it doing damage to May's kind by using it? That was the last reason for not using it anymore, but apparently they don't give a shit about her anymore. They can't keep dropping this technology and then going back to it just because of plot convenience. I mean, as it happens, there are gremlins in the system. Again, it's Ariam, isn't it? That stops them jumping, but they shouldn't be doing it, for heaven's sake. Anyway, they turn on Ash, whose command codes have been used, so it looks like he's been set up. I mean, this could have all been a bit more mysterious had they not been constantly reminding us that Ariam's been taken over. So.
Well, yeah, because they keep doing shots of her eyes and shit, don't they?
It's way too on the nose. It's like, actually, you could have been suspecting Ash at this point, but there's no chance you're going to, because they've already pointed the finger at Ariam.
What gets me is, given the differences and stuff, why has no one around her noticed?
Well, her eyes are flashing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Perhaps nobody pays any attention to her, poor thing.
Or just generally the difference in her behaviour. There's delays sometimes now where there weren't before. Do you see what I mean? And just...
Right. Well, we see an engineer who last appeared in Brother, right at the beginning of the season. This is Lieutenant Nilsson, who's played by Sarah Mitic, who played Ariam in the first season.
Oh.
Still no idea why she stopped. A bit of a mystery, but there we are.
Well, sometimes people stop if it's really heavy makeup and they react to it.
Yeah, that could be the reason, but there's nothing on Memory Alpha yet. Anyway, we're well ahead of the crew at this point, which is always a bit of an irritating position to be in. As agreed with the Talosians, Michael reveals the wound she calls Spock, so we've been building up for this for quite some time, and it turns out that she called him a freak and a distant Vulcan. Yeah. Found that slightly disappointing, to be honest. It was like we were expecting some much more of a break, more of a shocking outcome, not just a bit of name calling and wandering off.
Yeah, but the names she calls him are really hurtful. That's the last time
hurtful, but as I say, they've been building up with this in such a big way. I was expecting a bit more than that, really.
I don't know.
I mean, at one point we were ready to do something sexual, which I'm glad it isn't.
And I'm glad it isn't.
Yeah,
but I think what it is, I think, is that it's severe because he was so young. You think about the damage that can be done to a child that young. If you call them if you're part of their family and you call them a freak and you say you don't want them, that's the sort of thing that haunts someone genuinely for the rest of their lives. I think I hadn't clocked how young Spock was when all of that happened, and it would have done lasting damage.
I found it rather disappointing, to be honest, but there we go. 31 is chasing Discovery, and they both try to beam Spock and Burnham up at the same time, which is a new one.
Yeah, I like that, though.
Fina tells Pike to let them go, and he does so, but it's not really them that gets beamed aboard the ship. I guessed that quite quickly.
Yeah.
It's where the stock's still for ages as well. And in one of the episode's few funny lines, she tells her brother to say goodbye, Spock, and he does just that.
Yeah.
Before they disappear. Real Spock gives Pike a bit of a smile, which is the first time really Peck's come close to Nimoy, in my view. And Georgiou reveals that she knew it was likely to be a Talosian trick, but she said nothing in order to get Leland into trouble.
I like that.
She's such a git.
She is, but I like her.
Pike does the thing of beginning to point out to his crew that he can't ask them to disobey orders, which is kind of a trope at this point. But Detmer starts choruses of "Let's get going," which is quite nice.
I like that he's going to make this big grandiose speech.
Yeah,
and
we've heard so many of them in the past. But
Detmer's like, "Where are you going? Tell me."
Skip to the end.
Yes, I like it. I do.
So yeah, I found the episode a bit flat in places. That revelation was quite a disappointment. The fact that we know it's Ariam behind the problems rids Discovery's situation of any tension, to be honest. The Talos 4 stuff is kind of sweet from a nostalgic viewpoint, but not a lot happens besides them getting into Spock's head. They're not under any threat there, unlike in The Cage when we didn't know whether the Talosians were baddies or not.
Yeah, but if you've watched The Cage, which most fans will have done, what's the point of trying to make out they might be baddies?
Oh, no, I mean, they couldn't do that, but they could have introduced some sort of other threat, I guess. But
well, the threat is Section 31, isn't it?
Yeah, but they're miles away at this point, so it isn't a threat to them there. And the direction was irritating again. Not the same director as the previous one that irritated me, but, yeah.
Whereas I found the direction irritating in places, but I appreciate it when they were doing stuff with Hugh because it made me feel the disconnect more.
That was the best part of the episode, and I think that's a really good idea they've gone with, is actually, no, all is not well, and I think that's quite important.
Yeah.
So. And it's good to have the tension between Pike and Ash back again as well, because I say, the end of the last episode, I thought, oh, no, they're all best buddies now, are they? But they're not, so that's okay. No. Good.
I mean, I didn't find it... It would have been very difficult to have something more catastrophic that Burnham had done and still have her a likeable, sympathetic character. So I like the idea that what she's done from an adult point of view might not seem that bad, but from Spock's perspective as a small child, it was absolutely devastating, and she knows that. And, whereas she did it to try and save him, he has taken her literally at her word when she has said, I want nothing to do with you. And so therefore he hasn't. So for me, that works, and it makes sense. And it's much better than anything sexual. And I'm very glad it didn't go.
Yes, it is better than that, certainly, yes, I'll grant you that. But I was expecting something a bit more interesting. Hey-ho.
Yeah, well, I like what they went with, and I found it very emotional.
All right, well, let's find out what other people thought.
And we've heard from Doreen, who writes, I'm glad Spock didn't kill the doctors. I never thought he did.
No, you'd never believe that, could you? Not unless he had been driven mad, I guess. But
well,
then the problem is that
self-defence, I think. But then that's not murder, is it?
Yeah, plus it would also have affected the character into the future.
Yeah, which doesn't work, no.
Mess things up.
She says, I thought he probably had used the nerve pinch. At the end, when Michael and Spock arrive on the shuttle, I loved all the raised eyebrows. Yeah, me too. And the start with all the original series footage was good. I loved that. And I also liked the way that when they went into sort of the Discovery version of it, it was still recognisable, but it wasn't shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. No, I think they played that line very well, and rather as they did with the Enterprise itself as well.
Yeah.
They've been doing very well in just not reproducing 60s stuff that would look rubbish, but not having something that's so many million miles away and updated that it's unrecognisable from the original.
Yeah. And Doreen continues, I thought it was a wow moment when Michael and Spock were approaching Talos 4 through all the orange slipstreams. The stuff between Stamets the Doc and Tyler was intriguing. Anthony says it's as if the Doc has regenerated. Oh, I hadn't thought a bit. Do you think?
Kind of, yes, maybe. I don't know. It's more of a sort of reset, really, and he's got to start again from scratch. So, the relationships he's built up, including with Stamets, now he's got to begin again. So, whereas Stamets he just wants
host?
to. No, because the Trill has those relationships still, but they're not allowed to tap into them, are they? That's different again. Whereas this is very much a sense of everything's been reset, so you've lost what was there before.
Except he hasn't. He remembers it.
He says it's vaguely familiar, but it's like it's almost like it didn't happen to him; it happened to somebody else. So.
The corrupted spore drive makes me wonder if it was Arium or may have been behind the malfunctioning spore drive, because I think the encrypted messages in the spore drive incident may not be as connected as they were suggesting. That's a good point, because they're not supposed to be using the bloody spore drive anymore. So has May's knowledge that she's had...
It's like that never happened in this episode. It's really weird.
Yeah. At least we now know what happened between Spock and Michael. I think whoever suggested Michael hurt Spock in respect of his Vulcan dyslexia was probably correct. In my experience, the very last thing any child, and especially one who learns differently and is struggling to fit in, wants to be called is a freak.
I don't think anybody wants to be called a freak, but yeah.
But I think you're going to be more sensitive to it.
I guess so, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you. Right. We've heard from Jack Woodgate.
Oh, hello, Jack.
Hello, lovelies. Jack Woodgate here. I'd like to start with an invitation to all those naysayers who say that Star Trek Discovery is not proper Star Trek. Naysayers, gatekeepers, blah, 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 blah. An invitation then. Fuck off. Fuck off. Get to the end of fucking off, then fuck off some more. You pathetic little worms. I hear people saying, oh, it doesn't respect continuity, it doesn't respect source material, it doesn't respect... You know what? Shut the fuck up. Star Trek is about issues. It reflects issues. It always has done this. And Star Trek Discovery reflects the world we live in today. And as such, it's not going to be the same as Deep Space Nine, which was made in the 90s, and Star Trek Next Generation was made in the 80s, and the Star Trek original series was made in the 60s. It's all going to be different. We are moving on. We still have a lot of the same problems and same issues and everything like that, but how we look at them is different. And we've got new issues. We've moved on from some have got worse, etc., etc. We need that more than we need continuity and deference to whatever. Anyway, I have been loving Discovery so far. Quick umbrella thing, stand-up moments for me. As I said in my Twitters, the crew, the British crew fanboying and fangirling over Pike on his first appearance. Stannis and Tilly singing Space Oddity. I was like, lump right in my throat, right in the feels. As for last night's episode, yeah, it's Star Trek boy. You got Spock. He's very different to Leonard Nimoy, but what can you do? I think he's the spockiest Spock we can hope for. And I love the episode, I love the action, I love the storyline, and I love to see the return of Pike's old girlfriend and the old footage of from the cage. And I especially love Michael and Spock's relationship. And little barbs like, did you think the bed would work? And they're going to be a great odd couple, I think, and I'm going to look forward to seeing them interact more going forward. And joy, love, everything like that. Heartbreak as well. Noah's readjustment to his rebirth and his Stannis' loss and whatnot, and everything like that. It has been such a good ride so far. Anyway, I shall bid you all a good evening, and I shall see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye, Jack.
Bye.
Always want to mince his words, is our Jack.
Yeah. That made me laugh.
I mean, particularly with this episode, it's like you couldn't get more Trek if you tried. No. Tying it way back to the beginning in the way that it did is,
it's amazing.
You just got to salute the love they've obviously got for the original series.
Yeah,
which, I mean, in some ways, the original series is never my favourite version of Star Trek.
No.
But they're taking what's the best out of it and bringing it through to the modern day, which, I'm impressed with.
Yeah.
I might not always like some of the stylistic choices they're making, but ultimately the effort they're putting in, I do salute.
Yes. And in terms of Spock, Leonard Nimoy isn't there anymore.
Yeah, what can you do exactly? How can you replace someone like Leonard Nimoy? And yes, what's his face from the reboot?
Zachary Quinto.
Zachary Quinto was pretty close, but even he wasn't Leonard Nimoy, and nobody's going to be Leonard Nimoy.
You're not going to. No.
That was one of the real strengths of the original series, is that they cast it so well.
Yeah,
and those characters became so iconic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. What did Andrew make of this one?
hey, we're in the second half of the season now, and it's taken me this long, till episode 8, because I'm an idiot, to notice the theme of transformation in the series. Transformation and people not quite being themselves. Tyler's transformed, Saru's certainly transformed, Culber's transformed, and now maybe Ariam's on the cusp of some kind of transformation as well. And I think I only clicked on that with this episode because of the camera work. A lot of the camera work in Discovery in Season 2 has been quite, let's say, ambitious. Unmotivatedly so, a lot of the time. But I think in this episode, a lot of the more extreme camera work is quite motivated. There are a lot of unusual camera angles. Camera being sort of low down, far away, or the camera being right above, that are just unusual ways of looking at people, unusual ways of experiencing people in the space. And there are very wide lenses used as well, which kind of put a distance between people and the surroundings and created that distortion effect. And that all just creates a sense of people being unrooted from their surroundings and their environment, a kind of absence of normality. And I think that really worked very well for this episode. It's showy, but it's showy in a way that actually helps with the themes of the story that are being told. Stamets and Culber. Culber is very far away from the world, for good reason, and Stamets is trying to bring him back, trying to reacquaint him with the world and the familiarity of the ship and their relationship and the routine of their lives. And it's not working. Culber can't connect with the world, and it's wrenching Stamets' heart because he knows that at the end of that progression is him. Culber can't connect with the world, can't connect with the routine, can't connect with life, can't connect with Stamets. And that was really interesting to watch and really well acted, particularly from Wilson Cruz. And that brings us to Talos 4. Now, I think I've been actually, and I'll admit this, blind as far as this dynamic between Spock and Burnham has gone. I think I was probably expecting something more from what Michael did to Spock than what we got. But, on consideration, I think that's me looking at this from an outside adult's perspective. I haven't looked at this from the perspective of a young Spock who's in a very difficult time of his life, who idolizes his sister, who has just told him to fuck off, and worse than that. And I've not considered what the impact of just that would be to that young boy. You know, all families have these blazing rows. I mean, everyone listening to this will have experienced in their family at least one absolutely blazing row that would peel paint off the walls, and this is theirs. That's just what happens in families. And I think it's the kind of thing where, in short order, that could have been repaired. But it went so long without being repaired. It went so long without being attended to. The two sides went for so long without speaking to each other that the gap between them became a chasm, and they just couldn't cross it anymore. The weight of all that history of silence between them is just too much to cross, and it finally gets crossed in this episode. And I think that's something that the actors really sold, especially Sonequa Martin Green, especially that little boy who plays young Spock. He's really good. As for older Spock, I would say the jury is still out on him, Ethan Peck. I think I'll have to see a bit more of his Spock before I know what I think about him. There are lots of other things I could probably talk about, but I don't really have time, and they're part of the ongoing story of the season anyway, so there's going to be plenty of time in later episodes to talk about that. So I'm going to stop this here. Thanks very much for listening. Have a good week, and bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye, sir. Yeah, I suppose I hadn't picked up that it's all about transformation.
No, and that's definitely a theme that's running through the season.
It is, yeah.
Good stuff, that. The camera angles, you were like suggesting that some of them were for artistic reasons, but the problem is if they take you out of it, if it makes it look artificial, and you're no longer involved in what's going on, it's kind of failed as far as I'm concerned. They're trying too hard to be showing off with their camera angles. It's obviously it's an artifice, but it just reminds you that you're watching something artificial. Which,
with the taking you out of it and making you distant works with the Dr. Golber plot, because he feels distant and out of it.
I can see the argument, but it doesn't work for me. That's the problem.
It does
because
for me.
I'm no longer involved in what's going on because I've been placed. Anyway, we've covered that.
we have, yes. You're right, Andrew. The kid playing young Spock is brilliant.
Yes, he is actually, and the young Michael actor as well is very good too.
Yeah, but just he can't be that much older than Boxy. And just thinking about the Galactica episodes we've watched, and then thinking of this, there's something of a contrast.
There's a world of difference, isn't there? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We've heard from Martin.
Good morning, Orgs, or wherever you happen to be sitting in the causal nexus this week. Some very good Pike stuff, because of course we have a flashback at the beginning. It's a very charming flashback. The way it was put together was a bit haphazard, but I think it kind of fitted the style. Talos 4. And yes, Netflix spoiler image watch, and we got a picture of the Talosians and a picture of Vina. I noticed Vina was wearing a very 60s mini dress. Which is quite good. At least they're trying to keep in the style. I know Star Wars did a similar thing with Revenge of the Sith, I think, as they tried to blend the style of the modern style of the prequels towards the kind of the more 70s style of A New Hope. And we're in a quarry as well, Star Trek and a quarry, and with Doctor Who, no doubt, just out of shot, and the Blake 17, perhaps. Well, in another era. But then we are playing about with time, aren't we? And I think it was a very nice recreation of some of the actors and the scenes. It's how it would have been done today, I guess. And the flowers were very good as well. Just trying to recreate everything but make it look a lot more realistic, obviously, with the budget and the location filming we can do today. I did wonder why. I mean, the Talosians, I think one thing about them, you did see the kind of the veins in their head throb a bit in the 60s show, and of course they didn't speak, whereas today I didn't really see that. They also chose to speak, and it wasn't the forehead throbbing. Maybe somebody on the production team thought it would look a bit silly, which is a bit of a shame. They also seem to be after their own version of Jeremy Kyle, as it does seem to like they encourage Burnham to show the memory of how she distanced Spock from her, just for, to be quite honest, no discernible reason. I don't see why that's going to help with his situation in any way. We didn't see much of what they did to help his mental state, other than just rummage around in his memories. They beamed down onto the surface, and the Talosians and Vina just explained. This is a bit of a recap. Just explain what was happening, and do you know what? If they just explained that to Pike, I think the cage would have been over in about 10 minutes or so. We wouldn't have gone through all that. It just really amounts to a spat, really, doesn't it, between Burnham and Spock? Nothing really kind of big and major, I don't think. Nothing you couldn't come back and apologise for. Unless Burnham just kept it up, Every time you see Spock in the corridor, just say, I meant it all. You may have guessed that I found this the most interesting part of this episode. Because, every time we kind of got onto Discovery, I was kind of, oh, no, I want to go back to Talos 4. I want to see what's happening there. So, Ariam, of course, looking a bit shifty in the background. Yeah, she's the one. She did those down the data download. So we're still trying to figure out what's going on with them. Is there a predator on the bridge as well? Did I see there was an alien we just saw in the backdrop that kind of looked a bit like a predator? Which might also explain the 3 dots in Ariam's eyes, as I think it was Andrew or somebody noted on the feedback last week. Last week, I know we got some future echoes, and I was quite glad that they kept those to a minimum, because it's a bit of a sci-fi trope now, isn't it? You just see bits from the future happening in front of you. Spock is a fully fledged member of Discovery, The crew immediately behind the captain. I had to like that. It's like, yeah, we followed Lorca for a year. We know the drill. It's like, right, everyone, we're going rogue. Prepare for this. We're doing it again. Let's go. I know you mentioned Alice in Wonderland as well for Spock. Amanda says it kind of helps when everything is up and down. I don't think it's meant to be a cure, but just something that helps, especially when you're in Vulcan, which is a planet of perfect logic. Everything is logical. So God knows where they have, if they have fictional stories. The famous five were going to go into the creepy old caves, but they decided not to because it was illogical. Nothing in there. They might fall over. Proper risk assessment. So I don't know what Vulcan fiction's like. You don't always have to believe in the logic. Things we can all go a little crazy sometimes. This was a jolly good, enjoyable episode. We still haven't found Sharon Zobo, so I think that's got to be coming in the coming weeks. Oh, and Cybok Watch. No chance of Cybok this episode. All references to Cybok or Cybok-related media or possible existences of Cybok. But we will keep on, and we will look for Cybok. Search for Cybok. That's the next season because it's got season 3 now. So, okay, it only just leaves me to say, do you really think that beard working? So I'll hopefully speak to you next week. Okay, bye.
Bye. Yes, the beard is working, thank you.
I love what you said about the Vulcan famous five.
Yes.
They didn't go in the cave because it was illogical.
And yes, we're quite used to being rogue. Thank you very much for having followed Lorca. It's like they ought to have their own version of you have black alert for when they're going to jump, and they ought to have their own colour alert for when they're going rogue. Really, make good use of it. Brown alert, maybe. You really?
Sorry.
The Talosian's veins—they didn't throb like they did in the cage. A little unrealistically, as to said, but they did shine when they went inside Michael's mind at the end.
Yeah.
So they did make something of it anyway.
There was at one point a small throb is probably the wrong word. There was a flex. I noticed it in one of them, but I do think that someone went, they looked enough like bollocks as it is.
Yeah,
let's just not go there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Let's not shoot them from the back either, because that really was a bad view, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So, yeah, I think in the end, they made the right choices, I think. That's
our predator alien is Osnolus, by the way. Appeared a few times in the past. He's a member of the bridge crew, but has yet to speak, for possibly obvious reasons. He appears to be lacking a mouth. Anyway. But it's a great makeup affair. I really like it. Martin also, and you see, but I had to edit it down a bit because it was a tad on the long slide. If folk could just keep their feedback to 5 minutes, that would be really helpful. But he did go into the idea of possibly Section 31 having disappeared because they're like the Gestapo. I mean, certainly the uniforms make you think that, but the difference is we still know about the Gestapo 70 years after the war, whereas by the time 100 years you get to Deep Space Nine, that nobody knows about the existence of Section 31, or at least only the top brass. And they've, like now we can look in history books and look at pictures of the Gestapo. It's all been eradicated somehow, so that poor old Bashir can't find out about them. Rather like Cybok has completely disappeared, strangely enough, but there we are. Anyway. And finally...
What did the Llama God make of this one?
Logs, Gotte, Noijig, Tree, Noi, Life, sir, show, and we all play our parts, and when the music starts, we open up our hearts. Okay then, this was a very interesting episode. Very much mixed. It's an interesting thing they're trying to do here. I mean, right from the get-go, we knew this from last week's episode as well. This is one hell of a nostalgia fest, which is an interesting tack to take, and divisive. I'm going to say conclusively the audience found it divisive. And by the audience, I mean me and my wife. Now, obviously, me, being a long-time Star Trek fan, I love the whole start of the episode where we had the flashback to the original series. Not quite sure why they felt the need to flip the images around and stuff. I guess it's to go along with that camera work that you like so much. And for me, doing the whole Tell Us stuff, that really tickled things, and it's a good flashback to the original series, to obviously seeing Pike, and also kind of in the way a harbinger for things that will come and will happen in Pike's later life, unfortunately. On the other hand, Joe, who was watching it with me, found it a bit distracting and inconveniencing, and although indeed we do get the flashback, which basically, from my point of view, explains what you really need to know about the cage, for her she found it a bit alienating and distracting, because although maybe everything's there's also the sense as a new time viewer that what else are you missing? So I'll be interested to hear what other sort of first time viewers of Discovery, do we have any reading back who haven't seen any other Star Trek. But I'm interested to hear what they make of this, really. As for me, it was just an interesting choice, because obviously we had to get to the bottom of what Spock's been up to and what's actually wrong with Spock. And using Telos, yeah, I guess it was a thing they could have done it in any number of ways, but choosing this one was obviously just to tickle the nostalgia bone. And I didn't find it too bad as well, but, especially because it shows that Pike does indeed still harbour feelings for Vina, who is now off of Home and Away, apparently. So that was strange. The only problem I had really with the Telosian scenes is that the makeup is, weirdly enough, inferior to the original. The original was probably cheaper, but it had a really weird, freaky quality, what the pulsating veins. This version of the Telosians was far too clean and just standard science fiction-like. So yeah, once again, Discovery makes some really strange choices when it comes to alien makeup. Following on from that, Spock is obviously one of the central figures in this episode, and it's good that we finally get some sort of resolution of what has happened to him, and the fact that, yeah, obviously he didn't kill people, he's being framed by Section 31. I think we could probably guess that, but it's good to see all this confirmed eventually. And also, learning the backstory between him and Michael was painful. It wasn't quite as earth-shattering as I'd hoped for, but it was nice to see that finally redressed, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes with that. Interesting to see that Spock himself is actually warmer towards Pike than he is towards Michael, although I guess this is not unsurprising given what she did to him at such an early age. And what's interesting to see here is obviously this is the trend of Spock himself having such a connection with his superior figures, really, that he has this strong friendship with Pike. It goes on to Kirk, and is this a consequence of him lacking any strong male figures that he can identify with in his actual life? Obviously he's estranged from his dad, but what is interesting, and why I mention that, because obviously Spock's psyche is a discussion for a whole another podcast, really, probably, but the way that Spock is played here is he's very much plays like a younger version of Sarek, as the Sarek is played by James Frayne. So that's an interesting acting choice, actually, there by actor, I can't remember his name. That's an interesting choice, because obviously it's not trying to riff on either Leonard Nimoy or Zachary Quinto, so showing him as being someone who could conceivably be the son of James Frayne's Sarek is, it's an interesting choice, and probably a sensible one for this series, because it makes it standalone stand out without it seeming like a pastiche at any point, aside from the fact that we have to go back and revisit Talos, obviously. The big emotional high for this episode, though, which is weird that they put them both in this episode, because we don't get time to focus on just one of them. We've got two traumatised characters to think about this week, and that is obviously the resolution, well, not resolution, but the ongoing story with Hugh. And yeah, he didn't come back from the dead particularly well off, did he? I guess dying is a bit of a traumatic experience. So now this was really interesting to see play out, and painful as well. Obviously he's gone through his own trauma, and see how Stamets reacts to everything. I mean, yeah, he's making it about himself, really, and he should have given Hugh a bit more of a wider berth. But again, you're going to kind of forgive him, or we as the audience can forgive Stamets, because he has lost someone that's very important to him, but at the same time it's not just about him, it should be about Hugh and how Hugh responds and how he comes back to life. So yeah, this was kind of heartbreaking to see in a way, because it's possible that Stamets is now going to lose Hugh all over again. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this develops over future episodes. But what I did like is that Discovery hasn't wasted time in not showing us the confrontation between Hugh and Ash that I think we could probably all guess was coming. And this isn't quite like The Next Generation, where they may have sat down and talked about their feelings for a bit and then got on with it and been fine. No, there's some deeply disturbing stuff going on between there, and you can kind of understand that, because one of them did kill the other. And finally, the other big thing, of course, is Giorgio and her undermining of Leland. Now this is interesting. Is she doing this deliberately? I mean, obviously she's a climber, she's someone who wants to respond to her former position of power. She's clearly trying to get Leland out of the picture so she can rise higher in her own command. And is this what is going to continue through into Section 31 of the series? And is this actually what's going to end to the fall of Section 31? Because as has been suspected, maybe they overreach too much. Maybe they overreach because Giorgio tried to turn it into her own military arm and she tried to take control of the Federation or something. I mean, she was Empress once, she might want to do it again. So interesting to see if that's when that's going to lead. But yeah, in all, this was a pretty intense episode. Things actually came to a head. It wasn't putting things in place. I mean, obviously the story has moved along slightly. We've still got the mystery of what's happening to Ariam. She's obviously infected with the time squid virus, but it'll be interesting to see where that side of the story goes. So yeah, so I very much enjoyed what this was doing. And also there was a couple of really nice little moments in this episode. First of all, the crew cutting the usual mutiny speech from the captain, cutting that short. That was really nice to see. It's like, yeah, get on with it. Obviously, yeah, we're going to do this because we are. So I really loved that bit. And also, we got to see the little housekeeping robots. Have we seen those before? But they were really cute, cleaning up the cafeteria after Hugh goes on his rampage. I just love that little detail. That's how they clean it. Not force fields like the Enterprise D, but tiny little robots just like in Wall-E. I want to see more of those. More of those, please. Okay then, as I say, really like this episode, so interesting to see what everyone else thought, and interesting to see where it goes next week. Now they are indeed a crew on the run. Until next time, glory to you and your cast.
Thank you, sir.
So he did like the robots, what we found annoying,
yep.
And he thought that the 60s scrotum heads were better.
Yeah, well, different tastes for different folk.
Okay.
Some people like their scrotum heads, and we're not too on to judge. Yeah.
I do kind of like the idea that the way what's-his-face Peck, who isn't Gregory...
Peck, yes.
But possibly related to Gregory?
Oh, now I'm going to have to look that up, thanks.
Sorry. Anyway, the way he's playing Spock is as son of Sarek, and specifically the Sarek that we're seeing on screen.
That makes sense.
It does, actually, when you think about it, because he can't be Leonard Nimoy, and there's no point in trying, so find another route.
And it works at the moment because he has been trying to be more logical, more Vulcan
Yeah.
So it's a question of whether he manages just to give a bit more of that twinkle that he kind of did at the end of the episode. I think that would solve all my problems on that front. He's the grandson of Gregory Peck.
There we are.
There we are. I like the idea of Giorgio fighting for her own spin-off series. She's doing very well at that so far, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
And yes, what are you missing from 50 years of TV history? I'm sorry, it has existed that long, but it has. And they'd be rubbish if they didn't reference it occasionally. I mean, obviously don't reference it too often, so you completely alienate new viewers, but just to hint that there's more out there. Star Trek has been going long enough, like Doctor Who, that it's got such great depth now. It's a wonderful thing to explore, but I suppose that can be off-putting for some people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how our kids would have reacted if it wasn't for the fact that we went, oh, this is where this is going. Let's watch
the Menagerie is the way we did it, yes.
Yeah.
Because you effectively get most of the cage in that anyway, so...
Yeah, so...
Well, thank you, Mr. Lamagod, although it's not the last we'll hear of him.
No, because we got the comic to do.
Yeah, so if you're not interested in Star Trek the Animated Series, which is almost as old, then we'll catch you next time for more of our discoverage. But we move on now to Star Trek vs. Transformers, the final issue.
Yes, it's the final issue.
No, it's not. Well, it is, but... What do we think of issue 5 then? Was it a satisfying conclusion?
It was mad.
Yes, yet again they managed to up the madness stakes, which is brilliant. They managed to pull out one last crazy idea, which is, in this case, giant robot suits for the crew of the Enterprise to wear so that it can help take on the Decepticons, which is just fantastic.
I love it.
They even have a free-armed one for Arix as well, which is a lovely touch.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, it was fantastic.
Starscream's conquering of Kronos didn't last very long.
No, it didn't last 5 minutes.
Typical Starscream, it has to be said. I do love it. I've crushed more High Councils than Klingons have words for awkward bladed weapon.
Yeah.
And then Megatron just turns up and kicks his ass.
Yes, I love it.
And an interesting end for Megatron, isn't it? I don't know, is that a reference to the movies maybe? Because isn't Megatron, I mean obviously not on Kronos, but he's on Earth, isn't he, being probed by the human authorities, isn't he? And then he gets set free. Or am I wrong?
I have no idea.
I mean, I've no chance I'm ever going back to those movies, but...
No, I didn't watch them.
We saw the first one at the cinema.
You might have done, I didn't.
Oh, right, I'm sure we went together. But anyway, but then again, Lime of God might put us right on that. But
It might do,
it's
yeah.
kind of an interesting, dark ending to the story for Megatron, anyway. And I love the McCoy clashing with Ratchet as well, which is just brilliant.
No, it's good. It's mad, but in a good way. And I really enjoyed it.
So let's find out what the Llama God thought of it.
Llama God Slarg, Scott Date, Noijek, Tree. It never ends. Except, of course, it does. And so the Star Trek vs. Transformers crossover comic series ends as it began, really. Not with a bang, but with a, whatever. Okay, admittedly, that's, as I've been saying all throughout these feedbacks, unfortunately, my sort of general take on these crossover events, which is that there's a lot of Sound of Fury signifying nothing. So, final issue, Starscream tries to take over Kronos, the Decepticons intervene, then the Federation intervenes, teaming up with the Autobots, and teaming up with the Klingons, and they save the day, and that's that. I mean, I guess it's interesting to see that Kirk and his crew teaming up with the Klingons that they captured in the previous issues, and this actually continues a nice habit of, Kirk not trusting Klingons, except every time that he trusts them when they team up, like in Star Trek V, and I guess the episodes of the original series as well. So, there's some slight continuity issues there in the original series is anyway. But, just because he works with them, I guess, doesn't mean he trusts them. Again, I guess there's a couple of nice moments here, the big moments, but ultimately, as with everything, nothing really seems to have as much of an impact, apart from the Starship Tiberius, or whatever it was, at the when that was initially revealed. Again, as has been part of the course of this series, there's some good ideas that are just very hastily glossed over, like the whole idea that Cybertronian exosuits were built for the the Federation crew. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea, but we hardly see anything of it really, except they turn up to be pawns in the final battle. I mean, I guess that is very much in keeping with the traditions of at least Filmation cartoons and definitely of the original Transformers cartoon series. So, I guess it is at least fitting in that respect. But yeah, that's an interesting idea that I'd like to see more of, especially considering the question, do the Cybertronians leave that technology in the hands of the Federation? Do they actually pass on their more advanced technology? So, in the more recent IDW comics, the Tyrest Accord prevents them from doing that. But this is a different continuity, so, maybe they just did. Maybe that's why the Enterprise gets her upgrade between the original series and the motion picture. It's all based on Cybertronian technology. Who knows? And, of course, the end does leave things open for a future follow-up with the Federation leaving the Decepticons in the care of the Klingons, which seems to be a tad short-sighted, but, given that they also invaded Kronos themselves, I guess they had to be a little bit of political give and take, so, I can kind of understand what happened, but that's leaving the door open for a sequel wide open right there, so, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. And I guess my only other gripe with the comic really is that in Starscream's attempt to subdue the Klingon High Council, he tells them he's learned the language, that he likes how it's guttural and brutal. Really? Starscream? Guttural? Brutal? That's not the kind of things I think he's interested in any continuity. That's not the sort of taste that he goes in for at all. Not the rough stuff anyway. Well, except maybe behind closed doors, but that's a tale for certain corners of the internet anyway. So, yeah, ultimately, as I've been saying all along, unfortunately, and sorry for being a repeating voice of doom and gloom, but a missed opportunity to do something more interesting. Great artwork all along. The artwork has been consistent and good, and definitely evokes the feel of the year that it was aiming for, but ultimately, I guess I wanted more. But then, with such a bizarre crossovers, what was I ever going to get? Alright then, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming.
I fear he was hoping for more than meets the eye, but there we are.
Oh.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was my last chance to drop a pun like that, so...
Oh, dear. One thing did occur to me when I was reading it that did piss me off a bit, and it's the problem you get with all prequels, is when it ends with the Autobots saying to the Federation can call on them whenever they wanted. It's like, I literally looked at it and went, so where the fuck were you when the Borg came?
We could do with some titanic, massive, great big robots right now.
Yes!
Give Optimus a call. And rather like Section 31 on Cybot, they've obviously all got to be conveniently forgotten, haven't they, for continuity to work. But hey ho,
maybe Section 31 called on the Autobots, and Optimus Prime went, I'm not having any of that, and then they annihilated each other.
Yeah, I mean, there were enough silly little things to keep me amused throughout the run. Most issues had at least one good laugh. And as Lama says, the art has been really good all the way through. Yeah. I'm going to miss it, because it was just silly fun, really. But it was never going to go anywhere in particular, was it?
Not really, no. I mean, it's a bit like the Lama says, what were you going to expect from this particular crossover?
Quite. Right, we'll catch you next time for our review of Project Daedalus. Apparently, is the next episode title.
Oh, right. Daedalus. Who was Daedalus?
Oh, I'll look it up for next time. But it is something. It's one I've heard of.
Yeah.
So yes, we'll find out what that's all about. And who knows? It may even reference the episode. You never know. Catch you next time. Cheerio, bye.
Bye.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
You can find the Borgcast playouts on Spotify for your listening pleasure.
Visit our Tumblr site at borgcast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or borgcastammo. #Borgcast.
Shut it down!
Off, you bugger. Off.